Welcome to Within You. It's the podcast. And here we talk about the unknown. We figure out the messy middle. I call it the liminal space sometimes. And a lot of our lives is invested in navigating between now and what's next. And that threshold in between, which is so very interesting to me. Yo soy Vivian. I'm a wisdom teacher, mindset mentor, and transformational guide. Based right here in Funky Town, which is my beloved Fort Worth, Texas. Thank you for being with me today. I have so enjoyed this journey that we've been on. I call it the journey of discovery to love being human, which is the whole what this thing is about. What we've been doing over the last several months is actually exploring transformation. And we're using the framework of the seasons to guide us, to teach us, and to navigate us as we move through transitions or change. And I like to talk about transitions and change as things that are happening on the outside. And transformation is that lasting, sustainable shift that happens as we give birth to a new us, a new way of being, a new life. So in October, if you've just landed here, welcome. Welcome. I'm happy to open the door and guide you into my wonderful world of inner life, of exploration in the path between our head and our heart, and really getting to know who we are and what we want out of life and having more living. So if you've just landed here again, welcome. If this is an episode that somehow popped into your awareness, I would love for you to let me know how you found it, because honestly, all of this is honest. I don't know why I start with honestly or to be honest, but it's a weird little habit. I'm actually very surprised at the number of downloads for the podcast monthly. I mean, thousands is a huge number for me. And when I think about it, it makes me a little bit nervous. But again, I'm so excited that the message is resonating and that the insights or the stories that I'm sharing with you are hopefully beneficial. So I don't know where you are, who you are, or how you found me. I'm glad you're here. And if you'd like to connect with me, I invite you over to my digital house, the home that I call on the internet, which is my first and last name, viviancarrasco.com. If you'd like to take a peek at what I offer the world, I'm having the most fun in Within University. And that website is Big Shock, withinuniversity.com. It's where a group of us journey together seasonally in the same way that I'm offering this format of the podcast, which was an odd little idea to make things easy on myself. Interesting how life is. But this specific experience has started in October of 2019, and we've gone through a series of episodes that you can move through in a workshop style, or you can even explore them as how the seasons guide us to integrate our outward change. Those transitions that are happening in our life that lead us into inner transformation, that actually invite us there, but we only get there if we accept the invitation and do the work. As a quick reminder, just as a review for us here, is that we started way back in the fall, in October, when fall signals us to let go. You know, you start to see the leaves falling from the trees. We begin our beautiful dance with doubt as we kind of go back and forth with which way we should go, what decision we should make, you know, what's best, what's right, what's true for us. And I begin to invite you into that dance, taking the step forward with curiosity. One of the highlights from that whole season is that you have to focus at this time. Not you have to. All of this is an invitation. You are your best teacher. I am, again, simply a guide sharing my experience with you. I invite you to really focus on why and who. Why do I want this, and who am I going to travel with? Because it's what matters most to us as humans. And unfortunately, what we tend to focus on when we're navigating change, when we're moving through a transition, is how do I do this? And what am I supposed to do? And you get stuck there. You ruminate there. You establish deep, scary grooves of no action there. Lots of beautiful procrastination. So again, if you shift that from how do I do this and what do I do to why am I doing this and who do I want to do it with, my hunch is that you're going to have some pretty beautiful movement forward and then backwards, which is why I call it a dance, the Texas two-step. Listen to those previous episodes to fill you in on that whole storyline. After the fall, I really dove deep into the winter, this death that happens to us as we navigate towards a new way of being, and the grief that often follows it. This mourning that has to happen as you let go of that past self or those past experiences or that past life. And not that it is, I just don't know. I think that letting go of and looking back at the past is so necessary, because a lot of times we can't imagine what looking forward would be like. I remember the most poignant experience for me that I can think of right now is actually the transition of my own adult sons from youth to adult, and how I just really lamented letting go of them growing up, me being their mother. And now I still look fondly back at those memories, but I am just super settled in who they are as human beings, watching them, continuing to journey with them, experience things with them as less of the mother-son relationship. I mean, that relationship's always there, but just really seeing them in a different vein. So I'm saying that it's hard to look forward and imagine all that beautifulness without looking back and grieving what you're letting go. And then, like winter teaches us, this is when you listen. This is when you wait. This is when things grow dormant. And unfortunately, we want change to happen fast in this culture, in this American Western culture, if you're listening in from my homeland. But as many of us will tell you, transformation tends to happen slow and gradual. Some of us get dropped into a boom, bam kind of event, me maybe getting hit by a car, or some, either welcomed or unexpected huge life change. But typically I find that the transformation happens slow and gradual and over a lot of time. A lot of time. So be patient with yourself. And then finally, this, which is spring. I love this because one of the things that I have seen come up very clearly for myself and for the women that I've worked with over the years is that we verb through our nouns. We recreate our future, our present. And it begins when we see new growth. And then we are reborn. We're sort of this new being. You're a new you. Everything is clear. You are confident. You're moving through the world, just swaggering through it. And I think that that's why this episode was the most difficult to record. Well, I'm saying it's been because I'm actually sitting in front of the microphone recording it now, because I've gotten to that effort moment and said, it's going to be what it's going to be. Because sometimes I come in with some very clear points that I want to share with you. And other times I just have to trust and have faith that what needs to come through me and land in your ears, resonate with your soul, will just happen. And that's kind of what this episode is like. I'm just trusting that it's going to happen. Because one of the things that I've explored through these series of episodes and that I'll sort of dug into over the last 5 or 6 years is the idea that we begin with death. Actually, we begin with the letting go of identity, of a layer of our ego, and then we grow. Death, grow, as we create our way to a rebirth. And this is a little bit different because that growth and that rebirth, I think, happens cyclically. I think it all happens cyclically together, but it's hard to sort of just pinpoint, this is where I am now, right? You can tell you're growing or you're giving birth to a new version of yourself if you're going through labor pains, right? If there's something painful moving through your life, then you are traveling towards a new beginning. And for some of us, maybe that rebirth will be this very snappy realization of clarity, of confidence. We'll have embodied what we want it to be. But I don't want the idea of that happening either to fool you or to discourage you, because what I've seen is that it happens very different from that. It's very, very slow, and you might not even realize that the messy middle is behind you, that you've gotten to where you want, that you are settled into that peace and clarity and complete presence that you were craving throughout your soul. Because that's what happened to me. I just began living it and didn't even realize that what I refer to as those dark nights of my soul is that, unbecoming was over, that it was behind me. I had to have this huge aha moment, this wake up moment. And for me, it happened in a hotel lobby after years and years of just sort of, trudging. I'm imagining myself walking through mud towards this unknown destination of peace and presence. I'm sitting in this hotel lobby. I just experienced probably like my best day, right? It had every element of everything I love, including lots of books, lots of family time, lots of calm, sort of just chilling, enjoying good food and things like that. And so Jacob, David, and myself were in this lobby. We had gotten to the airport early. We were waiting for Josh to fly in from West Point at the time. And I remember having those experiences behind me, right? Having had these beautiful conversations with people I love. I had a bunch of new books I was excited to read. And I'm looking over at David and Jake having this conversation. And I'm just settled in this beautiful joyfulness. And that's when I heard those words without sound, love being human. And what I recognized after the fact is that it was almost like, now that you've moved through this is what you teach people, how to love being human in the midst of being human. We have this internal need to align with our deepest values, to be motivated by what matters most to us. But at the same time, we are struggling with that outer influence of culture and of expectation and of, you name it, right? Whether it's being a Southern Texas this or a that. I mean, we've got things pulling at us that take us away from our truth. And a lot of times that we don't realize that. There are undertones of knowing it, but it's not this like clear realization. So I feel like I had moved through it, and then I was given instructions to share it. And that was, for me, the beginning of rebirth. And that's, I think, the message that I want to get across is that imagine a plant, right? You notice that it's growing. It maybe popped up through the earth after winter and it's ready to grow and bloom. When do you identify that it's not growing and that it is completely born? I mean, at what point do you see a rose and say, this is it? And I don't think there's one single point, which made this episode hard to record, because at first I wanted to identify, this is the time that it happens. This is when you get it. And in truth, it swims around with this continuous interwoven, maybe even an infinity symbol, like my branding and the spiral that was gifted to me and that I love, that sort of guides me in this work. It's this constant revisiting of the same things in different ways so that they're seen differently. So as you see the green pop through the earth, that's the beginning of the rebirth, right? And then you see the leaves grow, and then this whole process goes together. So it's kind of hard to tease it apart. And that's what I wanted to bring to you, is the rebirth happens after death, but it continues through your growing. And so there's not a real line in the sand that you can draw to say, I'm done. I am grateful for the moments like that day in the hotel lobby when I finally saw it. Like, I'd been living it for I don't know how long. And it wasn't until I reflected back on what those words might mean and what was happening at the moment and what had happened that day that I realized everything that I asked for was sitting right there in front of me, and I wasn't recognizing it. And the second time that it happened to me was after I was hit by a car a few months later, when I had this beautiful out-of-body experience and then actually realized, this is a new me. I am different. I will live differently. I will love differently. I will be different because of this experience. So I'm just grateful for that. And the other times we're just kind of swimming in it without realizing it's there, sort of like fish may be in water, right? So life after death doesn't begin for me when our body dies, right? For me, it's when we surrender, when we allow a new way of being, when we bring on a new identity. That is life after death. And that's what I wanted to share with you. It's when we move through the struggles that we face in this body on this earth, from the smaller self of maybe an acorn into that big oak, and we just bring ourselves to it by letting go of everything that doesn't serve us. So that's what this first episode for April is. This budding, this beginning, this seeing of new growth. You're dying to the smaller self by tapping into your flow, by tapping into the source. And it can happen in lots of different ways. One of the ways that I experience this is actually in my marriage. And I talk about this a lot because I think it's significant and it resonates with lots of people. My husband and I have been married for almost 3 decades. And over those 3 decades, we have been different people. we've allowed each other to grow beyond that initial young person we were way back when. And as we've moved through big things in our outer lives, it's changed who we were. And so that's something that I can look forward to, that God willing, we'll continue to allow each other to grow and expand in our relationship and be closer and closer to the pure truth of who we are. And when we forget that, or when we step away from that, then we can pull away without letting go and then come back to it. So having the opportunity to become and unbecome, to unravel and then find that new center for yourself, can happen in relationship. And for me, I've seen that happen in my marriage. But I may not have seen that if I didn't reflect on that, if I didn't consciously look at that. So if you are the kind of person who always looks forward, who's looking forward to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and just kind of crossing those things off your list, take a second, take a breath, and look back and enjoy. Look back and reflect on. Look back and reconsider, revisit the past. Not from a position of fixing it or making it different, but just from seeing it, just from becoming aware to it. So the deaths that I see that we experience in this life before we are reborn, before we enliven, are these transitions in our identity when we move through an open door that leads us to a different self. And again, these are my experiences. This is all I have to share with you, is the things that I've gone through. And outside of my marriage, the other thing that I talk about a lot, which I just mentioned, is that birth of the change in roles, shifting from being the mother of boys, right? The mother of 2 boys, to being the mother of men. This is a time for you, if you feel like you may be at your rebirth, if you might be in this spring budding, if you're seeing new growth in addition to looking back and reflecting on that, I invite you so strongly to just pause in it and enjoy it. That's tough, and I know it is, but it's so necessary. So I'm going to repeat that again. I invite you to pause if you're in this space and enjoy it, or to set a milestone here and say, when I get here, when I have this. That doesn't mean wait until then to pause and enjoy we enjoy the whole process, but definitely not to miss it, because I felt like I missed it for so long. So, and I'm glad that I came to this realization that it's not a distinct, separate death, grow, and rebirth. It's not like this, it happens here with these instances. It is just this lifelong journey. It's exciting, and we're just always becoming and unbecoming. And so it's not easy to put a mile marker on it, like when we get to exit 442 or something like that. So what I wanted to offer you is maybe some questions to help you reflect, to see if you're always in a position where you can pause, reflect, and enjoy parts of the past. But this is just, if you're in this movement, if you're in this stage, if you're at this part of the dance, then this question might add value. So are you better and happier than you otherwise would have been if you hadn't taken this journey? And that's something to journal over, something to sit with, something to kind of reflect on. And again, pausing, enjoying, and then with some playful curiosity. I love, and if you've listened to me for a minute, I'm sure you've heard that either embodied in the way that I speak about things, or even in the example that I offer. This playful curiosity of asking yourself, now what, right? A plant might not know that it has to grow to a certain place, and then it has leaves, and then it buds fruit, and we might not recognize those stages of our own rebirth. So again, this is an invitation for you to reflect back and look at, what are those milestones for me? How can I annotate my own personal process of becoming and renewing? What does reinvention look like to me? What does self-creation look like to me? Because it's different for all of us, right? And I think it's important that we recognize it, that we reflect back on it. And for me, it's the whole reason I set this up this way, because I grieve first. I tend to see what I'm losing, grieve it, before I can really accept what's new and in front of me now instead, and see things and see the truth for what it is. And my super clear example is really being remiss, being sad, depressed, I guess, scared of what it was going to be like not to have my identity as a mother raising boys because they were leaving me. And like I said, now I am just swimming in the love of all of it because the guys are great, as adults, and it's a whole different kind of experience. And I could have never imagined that as I looked at them sort of growing up and growing out of the house. It just wasn't possible for me. So I think that we each have to look back and learn at how we personally change, attempt to recognize our process for becoming. And this writing helps us define ourselves and define what death looks like to us, what darkness looks like to us, and then what signals we have that we are being reborn, that we have experienced a rebirth, that we feel renewed, Whew. It might even be an exercise in writing to define who we want to be as we move through that transition, and then acting like the person we wrote down that we wished we were. So one of the things that's been constant throughout this last half of these episodes is that I offer you a practice in the second episode of the month, and I'll do the same here in April, but a daily, sacred, personal, spiritual practice is what helps close the gap between those things. We become by practice. The more we practice, the better we become. So take it small steps. Take it slow and let it be steady, because we can all do this. You can do this. I can do this. So it's, I think the big nut of this whole episode is that we are experiencing this as our own personal thing, just like we experience, I don't know how to say this, I guess that we have a personality around this, the same way that we pick the type of clothes that we want to wear, the type of hairstyle that we like, sort of what our mood or what our look is. We have those same distinctions in the way that we become and the way we change. I can share with you mine, and I've done that for years, but I'm really inviting you in this episode to reflect on what yours is. See its granularity, see its texture, see how it's different, unique, and special for you. And that's the invitation for April as we talk about this rebirth, this renewing, because it's a return to life after we've acknowledged a death. So I am super nervous about this episode because I think it's what I'm working on right now. I think it's what I will continue to work on for hopefully decades to come, is the dance between all three of these, right? As I experience death, growth, and rebirth at the same time. It's not easy to peel apart, but we can create distinctions in it as we look back and reflect on our own journey, on our own experience. I really want to invite you to share in this with me. Share how you found this episode, how long you've been listening, what spurred your curiosity. Just send me an email at vivian@viviancarrasco.com. I don't send out regular to my email list. I'm praying for you, loving on you, thinking about you all the time, but I'm not consistent about the schedule that I send out emails. I think it's about once a month. And if you'd like to receive emails from me about once a month that are super interesting, I think, and keep you in the loop on everything that's going on in my world, I want to invite you to visit the website, viviancarrasco.com, and just find a spot where you can put your name and your email. Typically, I think I've set up these buttons to say yes, please. And the reason that they're set up that way is because yes is kind of this micro commitment. It's a decision. It's a choice that you're making to say yes. And then please, and this is what I'm going to get into in depth in this second episode in April, it's really a prayer. Not please to me. You're not saying please, Vivian. You're saying please. Like it's an intention. It's a prayer that you're putting out. They're at the end of every blog and every podcast on the website. So I welcome you, really invite you to get on that email list so that I can keep you up to date on what's going on in my world when we go through new journeys. And within university. And within university is this cool, I think it's cool. It's obviously that I think it's cool. But within university is this intersection of our interior life and our creative expression. But what makes it beautiful, one is that I custom design all the journeys, all the learning journeys for the community based on what I'm sensing is needed in the community. And I think the funnest for me is that we learn all these things together. We become aware together because we are better together. There's only so much you can do in your head. There's only so much that's going to happen between you and those journal pages. So I really hope that this episode, these offerings, both in the podcast and in the blogs and in YouTube and everywhere else, accompany you on your journey of discovery as we move through these change and these transitions. But I also want to invite you into my world of love being human. And love being human, I just want to summarize before we end, is initially this self-discovery through experiential knowledge, right? What's happening to me? Because we don't know ourselves. We don't know who we are. We don't know who we're becoming. And we really haven't honestly figured out what we really want. So that is a big piece of love being human. And then this second part is this embodied practice. It's what's particular to you in your season. And in this workshop of episodes, I'm offering a practice every month as an invitation. These are my favorite ones. There's millions of them, hundreds of thousands of them. They could be anything for you. It could be dance, it could be singing, it could be walking, it could be shopping, I don't know. But it's particular to you, and I invite you to explore that. And then finally, this is where the magic happens as we bloom into our new way of being. And that is in the way that we choose to creatively express this becoming. For myself, some of the things that I've used to guide me to recreate myself are blackout poetry, gardening, milagros, painting, podcasting. So it's just really cool and fun. And I am grateful that you're here with me today. And I hope that you will continue to join me on the podcast. And if it serves you via email or even within university, you're always welcome to reach out to me at viviancarrasco.com. I cannot wait to hear from you. And I'm so excited for what's ahead of you and what you're learning about what's behind you. So until the next episode, may you be well.